Hello, today I want to share with you a story. It's a life-changing story, and within that life-changing story is another life-changing story. Some years ago, I was traveling through Marshville, North Carolina, and I believe that's the home of Randy Travis. And a friend of mine said, I'm thirsty. I would like to have some tea. I wasn't much of a tea drinker. I said, sure, we can stop and get some tea. There happened to be a Wendy's close by, and there was no traffic and no cars there, so that's a good time. Late in the afternoon, after 5 or 6 o'clock, and so I went in and ordered tea for both of us, sitting at the table talking. And I just noticed out of my peripheral vision, there was an elderly couple, both white-haired, standing there, and there was a slim young man standing right behind them in line. And we just kept talking, but all of a sudden I heard this booming voice said, "How you folks doing today?" And I'm trying to imitate that wonderful deep voice that the young man had. But I thought, wow, it just caught my attention. What kind of young man does that? He's standing there, but he speaks to this couple. And then they started talking to him, and you could just see their face lit up. But how the mood changed, going from just kind of an empty feeling in a building to all of a sudden now, the energy was just transformed into something pretty special. And so as some of you know, I'm the founder of the Leaning Institute. And the mission is to always recognize leaners. And so I was looking for an opportunity to thank the young man for what he did, not just for the couple, but for me getting to experience that. And so I did find that opportunity. And I asked him, he came and sat with me. So I asked him, I'm just curious where it came from. Where did you get that from? Because only leaners produce leaners. And so he started telling me kind of his life story and where he was at that time. And he told me that life at him was pretty rough at home. It was pretty bad. He's from West Virginia, and like me, he had a very strong accent, which I liked his West Virginia accent. And he told me, though, that things had got rough to the point that the child welfare, whatever it was, they came and forcefully took him away. So he was like 10 years old, hiding in a closet, and they come in and find him and take him away. And he said that he was trying to tell me where the leaning came from, how he became the person that he was. And he said they put him in foster care. And he said it was a lady, and he told me her name, but I don't recall that. But he said she went to give me a hug, and he said I jumped back. He said I didn't know what to do with that. But he said over time, my life changed. I became comfortable with that. And so that's how he got to be where he could speak to someone else and create those leaning moments. But if we fast forward now to where he was at this time in life, he told me, he said, he presented in a way that he was kind of in a tug of war. Friends at work, because he worked like a landscape company, doing labor, basically what it was. And he said these co-workers and so-called friends, because he had no family there in Marshville, North Carolina. He said they were kind of pulling him to go drink. Let's go do it. He said up until then, I've been saving my money, things I want to do. One day I want to have a home. And he was very disappointed in himself because he let himself down because he got a DUI. And my background is I'm an attorney, so I understood the ramifications and how that worked and how that could affect you and all those things. And so I kind of caught myself listening to his story, seeing an imaginary tug of war. Here's Travis on this side trying to tug toward his goals and dreams, but you got these other folks trying to drag him in the other direction. Because he said he enjoyed church. He enjoyed a lot of things, but just this period of time, he was drifting off his course. And you remember when I said, too, that Travis had that deep voice? Well, I had a recording studio, and I thought, wow, he had quite a voice. I thought, well, I wonder if he could sing, because he was kind of like Josh Turner, and he really could sing. And he told me he had a desire that he could use his voice. He would love to be able to use his voice for good. He loved to sing and in church and doing things. And so I still probably have a recording somewhere where he did kind of a little demo for me. And he sang that song that you should have seen it in color. And so we really had really kind of a bonding time there, and we're thinking about maybe future, who knows what might happen. But after we exchanged numbers, and Travis would call me periodically and ask me questions, you know. And I can recall one night, I was traveling up to, I think I was going to Michigan that night, but going through some windy roads in the mountains of Tennessee, I believe, holding on to service, hoping that, I didn't lose him as we were talking about things, because he was doing well. He had another job, but he told me, and here's a story within a story that he told me about. He said, James, he said, I'm working at this place, and he said, but I want to ask you a question. He said, did you create that leaning stuff? And I said, well, son, I guess you could say that, yes, I guess so. He said, well, that stuff's amazing. Let me tell you a story. He said, because I taught him over time about leaning toward your goals, leaning toward family, leaning, whatever your dreams were and relationships, and so I told him that, lean into those things, and you can trust yourself, you reach a different level. And I told him how this is how people make it, and this is what a leaner is. And so, but here's the story he told me. He said there was a young fellow at work, and he said he was on drugs and stuff. And he said, I shared him what you taught me, the leaning stuff. And he said, you know what? He's not on drugs anymore. He's not doing that stuff anymore. He's like he really is like a different fellow. He said, that stuff's amazing. Well, here's what's amazing. That, every home, Travis told me his story, where he came from. But your home now, where you came from, everybody can relate to this. Every home is creating for the children there, or the child there, and even the adults, booster baggage. Travis unfortunately had carried a lot of baggage, but it seemed like with the foster care lady, he dropped a little bit of it, and his journey was getting lighter, not carrying as much baggage. And I really hope sincerely, and I know it did, that my time with him helped him drop some more baggage. So the last that I had contact with Travis, he was married to a beautiful nurse, had a little boy, had a home, and he was helping his family back in West Virginia. And it was just the most beautiful story. But what I want to impress upon you, a conversation, and taking just a minute to thank somebody for being that leaner, creating those leaning moments, what he did for that couple and how he brightened their afternoon. Those are health benefits for all of us. I call it antidepressants. So I wanted to recognize Travis, but in doing that though, I always benefit from it. I got a beautiful memory that I still carry and really do cherish. My time knowing Travis and him telling me about his story, shedding that baggage. And so hopefully here's what happens. Well, his little boy, he won't have that baggage. Out of that home, that little boy can say, I had a loving parents, and he will have nothing but a boost. He'll never know what Travis's journey was like. Keep recognizing those leaners, because it really does make a difference, like in Travis's story. What a story. Thank you.